Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into your sources, the research, the articles, even your notes, and really pull out the key insights. Today, we're tackling a really interesting, maybe even slightly provocative question. Is there such a thing as a Cambodia gene? It sounds simple, right? But it opens up this incredibly complex picture. We've gone through the genetic research, the history, the public health studies you send over, all to explore this really intricate, layered genetic story of Cambodia.
And just to give the short answer right up front,
Yeah.
no, there's no single Cambodia gene. That's not really how it works. What we actually see when we look closely is, well, something much more interesting. It's like a unique genetic recipe.
A recipe, I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been shaped over thousands of years by history, by migrations, and crucially by the environment itself.
Right, so less about one specific ingredient, more about the whole culinary history, maybe?
That's a good way to put it.
And in this deep dive, we're going to unpack those ingredients. Some might surprise you. We'll look at the ancient roots. Then a pretty startling discovery from some old ruins.
Well, yeah, that was fascinating.
That really makes you rethink early history. And then we'll get into the impact of a disease that's, well, it's literally left its mark on the genes of many people today.
A very powerful mark.
So yeah, get ready. We might be challenging some assumptions about history and biology here. Okay, so let's start unpacking that recipe. Layer 1. Where does the story really begin for, say, many Khmer speakers? What's the foundation?
Well, the main genetic base for most Khmer speakers goes back to the ancient Austroasiatic language family.
It's Austroasiatic, right?
Yeah, think of it like this huge ancient network linguistically and genetically that once covered a massive part of Southeast Asia, from parts of India maybe, all the way over to Vietnam. And the ancient DNA work, especially from places like Vietnam, has been really key here. It shows that early farmers, spreading out, carried this mix.
A mix of what exactly?
Primarily, its ancestry related to early agriculturalists from southern China, linked to the spread of rice farming thousands of years ago. A huge shift.
So these farmers brought a specific genetic signature as they moved south, setting up shop in the river deltas.
They did, yes. Yeah. That's a major component. But, and this is important, it wasn't just that.
Okay.
That agricultural lineage is mixed with an even deeper genetic layer, something linked to Eastern Eurasian hunter-gatherers.
Ah, so people who were already there before the farmers arrived.
Exactly. The populations that inhabited the region before this big agricultural wave came through. So right from the get-go, we're looking at admixture, a blend.
So even the earliest genetic picture isn't about one single origin. It's already a dynamic mix. It really shows how connected the region was, even way back then.
Absolutely. You can picture that Austroasiatic base, maybe mixed with the hunter-gatherer signature as the sort of bedrock, the foundation. It's spread with rice farming, down the Red River, down the Mekong, a shared ancient heritage, really. And then later stuff gets layered on top.
Okay, let's layer something on top then. Fast forward quite a bit. We're talking early cities, Mekong Delta, maybe 1st to 3rd century CE.
Right, a really formative time, the dawn of early states.
And this is the period usually linked with Indianization, right? Mostly seen as cultural influence, religion, ideas, art.
That's a traditional view, yeah. Primarily cultural transmission.
But then archaeologists dig up something at a site called Wat Komdu in Angkor Borei.
Yes, and they managed to get ancient DNA from someone buried there, dated right to that period, 1st to 3rd century CE. Crucial timing.
And the DNA results were, well, pretty stunning.
Absolutely stunning.
This person, this ancient individual, carried somewhere between 40 and 50% South Asian ancestry.
40 to 50%, let that sink in.
Yeah, I mean, that's nearly half. From someone living over 1,700 years ago in that region, it really makes you stop and think.
It really does. Because this isn't just, an interesting data point. This is hard biological evidence. It tells us very clearly that people, actual human beings, were moving between South Asia and mainland Southeast Asia. Not just ideas, not just goods.
And much earlier, and perhaps in larger numbers than maybe historians had thought.
Precisely. This one person really challenges that whole Indianization was just cultural idea. It points directly to significant human migration, intermarriage, settlement of communities. Right at the beginning of these early states, it wasn't just a trickle of influence.
Wow. So it wasn't just a few elite traders or monks. This suggests a much more human-level integration was happening.
That's what the genetics strongly suggests, yes.
And does this Vat Komnu finding stand alone? Or do other genetic studies kind of back this up?
It definitely fits into a broader pattern. Other studies, looking at modern populations in Southeast Asia, also find signals of South Asian ancestry, especially in groups with historical ties to Indian culture. But the Vatkamna individual gives us this incredibly precise ancient timestamp. It makes that historical connection concrete. It's not just a theory anymore. It's there in the DNA from that exact period.
So this really does raise a big question for you, listening. If someone back then had nearly half South Asian genes, do we need to completely rethink Indianization? Was it mainly cultural borrowing? Or was direct migration and mixing a much bigger part of the story of how early Khmer states formed really makes you reconsider how history happens, doesn't it?
It forces a reconsideration, absolutely.
Okay, shifting gears now. From ancient migrations to something much more recent but equally powerful in shaping that genetic recipe. We're talking about the everyday genetics, the stuff you can almost feel, the mark left by generations facing malaria.
Right, a relentless selective pressure. And this brings us to hemoglobin E, HbE, for short. It's basically a tiny genetic change, a tweak, in the hemoglobin protein, the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen. But this small tweak changes the red blood cells in a way that somehow offered really good protection against malaria. It's a textbook case of natural selection.
And when you say it offered protection, how common did this HbE variant become? Are we talking about a small percentage?
Oh, far from it. This is where it gets truly astonishing. The frequency of the HbE gene variant in many parts of Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, it gets up to around 60%.
60.
60.
60%. Yes.
Yeah.
Think about that. 6 out of 10 people carrying this specific genetic variant.
It's incredible. One of the highest frequencies anywhere on Earth for a trait like this, right?
It's just undeniable proof of incredibly strong natural selection. If a trait gives you that much of a survival advantage against a killer like malaria, it spreads like wildfire through the population, genetically speaking. So HbE is clearly the big player here. But you mentioned earlier the environment shapes things. Was it the only genetic adaptation related to malaria, or did other things pop up too?
That's a great question. Because the pressure for malaria was so intense, evolution kind of threw multiple things at the wall, genetically speaking. HbE is the most famous, the most common.
But not the only one.
Not the only one. For instance, there was a big study in Prey Veng province in rural Cambodia. Really important work. They found that around 54% of the women in their study carried some kind of genetic hemoglobin disorder.
54%.
Yeah, mostly HbE variants, as we discussed, but also another condition called alpha thalassemia.
Alpha thalassemia. That also affects hemoglobin, right? Like you make less of it.
Exactly. It affects hemoglobin production.
Yeah.
So you put HbE and alpha thalassemia together, and in that study, more than half the women had one of these conditions.
Wow. It just paints such a clear picture of how widespread these adaptations became under that malarial pressure.
It really does. And there's actually another important one we should mention, G6PD deficiency.
G6PD. Okay, that sounds technical. Glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. What's that about?
Right, it's an enzyme issue. Basically, it affects how red blood cells handle certain kinds of stress. It could be certain drugs like some antimalarials or infections, even eating fava beans, strangely enough.
Fava beans?
Really? Yeah, it's the classic trigger. Anyway, under stress, the red blood cells break down easily, which can cause anemia. But presumably, it also offered some protection against malaria. And studies near the Thai-Cambodia border found it was quite common. About 26% of males were G6PD deficient. Fewer females, around 3%, because of how it's inherited.
26% of males, that's significant too. So we've got HbE, alpha thalassemia, G6PD deficiency, all these evolutionary answers to malaria. But you hinted earlier, are they just good things? Or is it more complicated today?
It's definitely more complicated today. That's the crucial point you have to ask. Are these variants protective? Harmful?
Or both?
Both.
How so?
Well, think about it. They clearly helped people survive malaria in the past. Massively increase the odds of living long enough to have kids. That's the evolutionary benefit. But today, in modern healthcare, they can cause real problems. They can affect pregnancy, create risks for newborns, make certain medications dangerous to use.
Ah, okay. So what was an advantage then can be a challenge now.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how evolution is often a trade-off. It's not about perfection. It's about what works well enough in a specific environment at a specific time. Nature's solutions often come with baggage, you could say. these adaptations carry modern health implications.
That's a really important point. Evolution's trade-offs. So, okay, knowing all this about the high prevalence of HBE, thalassemia, G6PD, what does that mean for public health today, especially for something like anemia, which is a big issue in Cambodia?
A huge issue. And this is where the genetics really collide with policy. For years, Cambodia, like many places, has tackled anemia with iron supplements and food fortification.
Right, that seems logical. Anemia often means iron deficiency.
That's the standard global playbook, yes, because often it is iron deficiency. But remember that Prey Veng study we talked about?
The one that found over half the women had hemoglobin disorders.
That's the one. It threw a massive curveball. The researchers reported very low rates of actual iron deficiency in that population.
Really? Low iron deficiency.
Very low. And, get this, they even found high levels of iron in the local groundwater. So, environmental iron probably wasn't lacking.
Whoa. Okay, that changes things completely. If people aren't low on iron, then giving them more iron won't fix their anemia, will it?
Exactly. That's the core implication. In that region, and likely others with similar genetic profiles, the anemia isn't primarily caused by a lack of iron. It's driven by these incredibly common genetic variants, the HBE, the thalassemias, maybe G6PD playing a role too. These conditions inherently affect red blood cells and hemoglobin levels.
So the standard give everyone iron approach might just miss the mark. Or worse.
It might be ineffective for many, yes, and potentially even harmful for some individuals, depending on their specific condition and iron status. It means a blanket policy might not be the right fit.
Which suggests we need a much more tailored approach, maybe based on region or even involving genetic screening.
That's where the conversation is heading. It suggests that public health strategies might need to be much more nuanced, perhaps less focus on universal iron supplementation in some areas and more on screening for these common hemoglobin variants, genetic counseling, managing the specific types of anemia they cause.
It really sparks a critical debate, doesn't it? If genetics, not iron deficiency, is the main driver of anemia in certain provinces, should screening and counseling become more central than just handing out iron pills?
It's a vital question for policymakers, forcing them to integrate this genetic knowledge into their planning. It shows how understanding deep population history is crucial for effective modern healthcare.
Okay, let's pull these threads together. We've covered a lot of ground. Can we quickly recap this unique Cambodian genetics story?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what we see isn't simple, but it's fascinating. You've got the ancient base layer, that deep Austroasiatic ancestry, tied to early farmers moving down from southern China, mixing with existing hunter-gatherers shared across the region.
The foundation.
Right. Then the historic overlay, that significant South Asian gene flow happening early on during the formation of the first states. The Vakambu individual is the smoking gun. Their 40–50% South Asian ancestry shows substantial mixing, not just cultural borrowing.
A major rewrite of that period.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
And finally, the selective edits. Malaria's powerful impact, driving HBE frequencies up to astonishing levels like 60%, making it one of the most common variants globally, and bringing along other adaptations like alpha thalassemia and G6PD deficiency.
Adaptations that help survive malaria, but now are major drivers of anemia themselves.
Exactly. They're now a key part of the local health landscape, complicating things like anemia management.
So back to where we started. Is there a single Cambodia gene?
Definitely not. What we have is this incredibly rich, complex genetic story. It's woven from ancient migrations, significant historical interactions, and the really profound, lasting pressure of the environment, especially diseases like malaria.
A living history written in DNA.
Precisely.
And it's not just ancient history, is it? It's stuff we can measure in clinics today, see in DNA tests, and it directly impacts public health policy right now. This deep dive really shows how history, environment, and our biology are just so deeply tangled together. It makes you think. What stands out to you about how events from thousands of years ago and the pressure of diseases can leave such clear, measurable marks on people's health and identity even today? Something to keep exploring, keep asking those questions.